Hey guys, my name is Cam and welcome to Ask Me I'm Bipolar. Now, if you're new to my channel, please do hit that subscribe button. I put videos out every Friday and I wouldn't want you to miss out. So this is part one of a series I'm going to do about sensory overload. Now, it all started with something that happened to me recently. I was taking my iPhone to the Apple store in the Trafford Centre here in Manchester, England, and it takes about 2 hours to repair. So I left it in the shop and I thought I'd have a wander around, and in the end I thought, okay, I'm going to sit down in Starbucks. So I went into the Starbucks, I bought my coffee, and I lasted about 8 minutes before I had to run out the shop. What happened, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you what happened. As I was sat there, I got so overwhelmed with sound that I just panicked. It was making me angry. All I could hear was like clinking of coins, cups, coffee machine was whirring, people were shuffling their feet, slurping drinks, chewing, like talking, breathing. I could just hear this absolute cacophony around me, and I held on for a while, but it made my head hurt. I mean, physically hurt. With all that noise and the fluorescent lights and the stifling heat that we've got in the UK at the moment, because apparently we're having a heat wave, I just couldn't take it. My brain couldn't handle it. It was just too much. Now, I've always had this problem, even from being a little girl. I always remember hearing things that other people couldn't hear. And I don't mean auditory hallucinations. I've never heard voices, so to speak. But things like, I remember being in a house with an old TV set, and every time it was turned on, there was this high-pitched whining noise, and it used to drill my head like someone had just put a hot poker through my ears, and I just couldn't sit and listen to it. I couldn't. It just got such a reaction from me that I'd have to either leave the room or put music in headphones. Another thing I remember is basketball games. I can't watch them. Even within seconds of seeing a basketball game on TV, that squeaking noise on the court where the train, even talking about it is really freaking me out. Oh my god, I can feel it. Whew. So what is going on with me? Well, I get sensory overload, so when I'm in a busy and noisy environment, it can be literally torture for me, both physically and mentally. This can lead to a meltdown, a panic attack, or even just like rage sometimes. Now, I'm going to talk about sensory overload in a series of videos, so in this particular video, we're going to talk just about the auditory stuff. Bipolar Hope magazine states that hearing hypersensitivity is actually quite a common mood symptom associated with bipolar. Anecdotal evidence suggests that a significant slice of people with bipolar experience an almost painful reaction to noise, especially during mood episodes, usually mania. When it comes to scientific proof, however, no one's doing the research that would validate this connection. We all know in mania that our senses become heightened due to the extra dopamine floating around in our brains. And the opposite happens for depression because we don't have enough dopamine floating around our brains. So why does this happen then when we're not in an episode? There are two main diagnoses for this auditory sensitivity. These are called Hyperacusis and Misophonia. Now, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing them exactly right. But before I talk about these, I want to clarify one thing. When I say the word noise, I mean unwanted sound. First, let's look at misophonia. Now, the word literally means hatred of sound. It tends to come in late childhood or early adolescence, and it's also known as selective sound sensitivity syndrome. There is no clear agreement regarding the definition of the word misophonia, but the general consensus is that it's a neurological auditory disorder. The triggers for misophonia are usually things that other people without it don't notice. So like when I was in the coffee shop and I could hear the clinking of coins, cups, whirring of coffee machines, and all that kind of stuff. The brain is supposed to automatically filter out background noise so you can concentrate on what's important, like a conversation or anything relatively salient. But with misophonia, it can't do that. And as I said before, sometimes that can be things that other people literally can't hear, like the TV example I gave you. Typical triggers include things like chewing, clicking pens, scraping forks on plates, coughing, and these kind of noises can elicit an instant emotional reaction, an extreme emotional reaction, to the point sometimes where people just want to lash out. A study in April 2017 of misophonic patients showed a correlation between misophonia and affective disorders such as bipolar. Now, I'm going to put the link in the description below so you can have a look at that study. There are no official statistics for how many people in the world have misophonia, and there's no documented cure either. And looking at it anecdotally, it seems to be really tricky to get a diagnosis. The second disorder is called Hyperacusis. Now that affects about 2 to 3% of the population, and it can come on instantly or gradually over time. Now, hyperacusis is most commonly attributed to some kind of damage, so hearing damage or brain damage. This can include head injury, ear surgery, exposure to loud noise, or even persistent ear infections. Hyperacusis has been defined as the experience of inordinate loudness of sound that most people tolerate well, associated with a component of distress. And it can be caused by many conditions that may include bipolar, because it does occur where there's a neurological error. It's a condition believed to arise from neuroplastic changes resulting in a disinhibition or overexcitation of auditory neurons in the auditory pathways, which means the neurons that regulate sound aren't doing it properly. The psychological component of hyperacusis is attributed as a reaction to the physical pain, which can cause an aversive emotional reaction, and that could be stress or even a fear of sound, which is called phonophobia. Hyperacusis and misophonia are often confused, but they are two completely different conditions. People with misophonia only negatively react to specific sounds, not all loud sounds, like hyperacusis. Think of it like this. Hyperacusis is noise-induced physical pain that usually is the result from some kind of injury, whereas misophonia is more like a noise-induced rage. I think I have misophonia. Now, anecdotal evidence has shown a possible correlation between bipolar and misophonia, but any proper studies that have been done have had a very small sample size or have used very few experimental methodologies. The real life problem of having auditory sensitivity is that anytime I go outside, I get really overwhelmed. Public transport is a no-go, and anytime there's a crowd, chances are something will trigger me. It's also kind of bad in the house as well. I have a bearded dragon, and sometimes he likes to glass surf with his little nails on the glass, and it's just such a horrible sound. I have to leave the room. And for the people that live with me, well, I would say sorry, but as you can see from this video, it's not my fault. Now, as a side note, I've not actually talked about sensory processing disorder, which is the one most commonly associated with autism, and that's because I'm going to do that on another video. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you learned something too. Now, as always, what I want to know is, what is your experience? Do you have sensory overload when you go out? Do you hear things that other people can't hear? Tell me about it. Write it all in the comments below. So as always, thank you for listening, and if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please do. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and also check out the blogs on askmeimbipolar.com.